If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the ThrashManiac99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys. We only got a few more left before the year's over, so might as well get to them while I can. So for today, I am talking about the sophomore effort from Massachusetts modern thrashers High Command with Eclipse of the Dual Moons. So this came out on November 25th on Black Friday on Southern Lord Recordings. Of course, this label mostly known for Power Trip, but also you got this band High Command on that label. And actually, this is the first time I've checked out High Command. I've heard this name come up a lot in the modern thrash conversation, but I never really gave them a chance until this new album. I thought, you know what, they're thrash, and I love thrash. I'm going to check it out. Now, I will have to preface, their Metal Archives page has them listed as crossover thrash. I think you guys are off by quite a big margin. To me, I don't think this is crossover thrash. It might have some punky hardcore moments here and there. I think this is more blackened thrash because, good God, the blackened feels that I get on this album are very prevalent. Like, the vocal style is just right on that, like, blackened, like, first wave black metal kind of bark. And it kind of reminds me of, like, a mixture of Athanar from Midnight and Dawn of the Dead from the death metal band Nunslaughter. That's really the vocal approach I get on here, so I don't think of them as a crossover band. I think of them as, like, a blackened thrash band, but with some other elements added in on top. So we kick things off with the title track, and really this, as well as a later song, Siege Warfare, these are the two, like, real short tracks, like 3.5 to nearly 4 minutes long, and these tracks are just straight up, high-octane, intense, punching you right in the face, barn burners of blackened thrash. Like, there's just so much riffage going on here that feels harkening back to, like, early Slayer and old Metallica, maybe even a little bit of, like, the blackened thrash contemporaries like Destroyer 666, among so many other elements that remind me of those old school days in these two tracks, but in a much shorter format. And like I said, it's just high octane, punch you in the mouth. What more could you ask for? It's real great, real fun, absolutely loved it. Now, the rest of the tracks, however, they diversify quite a bit. Like, they get longer. Like, I think the average length of the remaining songs is like 5.5 minutes. Like, most of these songs clock in at over 5 minutes to 5.5 minutes for the most part. But we get to tracks like Immortal Savagery and Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery, and they both have, like, really cool build-up moments. Well, really, most of these tracks have cool build-ups, but with Immortal Savagery, it kind of starts off with this, like, more classic metal groove and riffage, but with that blackened vibe. Definitely makes me think of Midnight right out of the gate. Even some, like, occasional hardcore grooves come in, but then you get into those, like, classic punky D beats that just make it feel not only more like Midnight, but also feels like Motorhead and Venom right out of the gate. Meanwhile, with Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery, you know, it has these, like, eerie, clean guitars that begin to show off some more darkness on top. Then it gets into, like, a real, like, doomy, like, doom metal section that feels like Candlemass or even Black Sabbath. But then the riff changes and gets into more of that old school Metallica vibe as the tempo picks up. Groove City, even some squealy dive bombs going on, more D-beat stomps, and I'll talk more about the breakdowns later. Now, I will say there was one particular riff that happens in between both songs, Immortal Savagery and Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery. There is a riff in both of those songs that feel kinda similar, which I don't know if anybody else that listened to this album picked up on that, but there was a riff in there that kind of felt similar to one another. I don't know if it's just me, or I was just, like, really closely like, what's that? Ooh, I thought I heard this on Immortal Savagery. Oh well, but it's still cool. I'm just saying, I just wanted to point that out. Then Omnision Flail of Infamy has this, like, really cool, sinister march that starts. It feels like an evil marching Metallica moment with the riff, the rhythm, some spoken word, and some really cool drum fills and a thrash riff to start off before we get back to more of the high-octane thrashiness. More Metallica riffing that's being showcased, but there's some Slayer thrown into the mix, but with more intensity behind them. Fortified by bloodshed, kind of like Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery, it has a different kind of start. It has a more ominous start because you get some sinister synths coming in, which gives off like a horror movie feel. But then it gets into another, and I keep saying them over and over in this video, but more of those Metallica-inspired riffage, or more Metallica-inspired riffs. Cool bass flourishes happen here. The tempo then slows down a little bit, but then the riff gets a little more crawling, which is pretty cool. And then some, like, classic metal moments kind of come back here. And even the tempo does get a little bit into that, like, punky hardcore zone, so I guess that's where the crossover thing comes from. But to me, it's not enough to call them a crossover band. Meanwhile, there's this really cool chromatic riff that's being performed towards the end of the song while that, like, punky energy is being unleashed. Chamber of Agony, which has this cool opening acoustic guitar that kind of feels somber as the violin joins in on top. And then you get, like, gradual ambience coming in the background before you get a big riff that feels like... It starts off feeling like almost like modern Darkthrone, then it turns into Black Sabbath. But then it goes into more speedy riffs and D-beats to go back to that Midnight Motorhead feel. And I love the little haunting atmospheric touches that you get on here. But then we get to the closing track, Spires of Sakartha. 12 minutes of just wild, whatever you want to call it. Like, it starts off with a cool melodic guitar line that turns harmonized, which was really cool. Then you get some, like, almost like witchy spoken word while the instruments are doing their best to build up atmosphere and tension. And then into some evilness we go, and we get into these riffs that I definitely could hear some Nunslaughter in a lot of these thrashy riffs on this track in particular. But then it gets down to another Black Sabbath moment when the tempo slows down and that riff feels like Sabbath. Then it slows down even more to, like, doomy Sabbath territory, but with an awesome, like, melodic shredding lead on top. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the riff and the tempo switches up into, like, Iron Maiden-inspired gallops, which was cool. And then you get a lot of shred going on throughout. And then you get a cool Metallica riff on top of the breakdown, where the breakdowns on this album definitely felt like they listened to a lot of Rain and Blood by Slayer. Like, this breakdown has, like, a Slayer feel, but with a Metallica riff that almost feels like Creeping Death a little bit. And then the final couple of minutes, you get into this, like, really cool atmospheric ending with bells and acoustic guitars and violins at the end to kind of end the album on a dark, somber note, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, like I said, title track and Siege of Warfare, straight up thrashy barn burners with high octane energy, while the rest of the songs start off with more cool build-ups or atmospheric beginnings before it gets into the real meat and potatoes. Lots of old school influence on these riffs and the songwriting, mostly Slayer and Metallica, but you also get some Midnight, some Darkthrone, some Nunslaughter, Motorhead, even Black Sabbath. Now, this is another thing I picked up on. The little melodic progressions you get here and there on this album, I don't know why, I kept thinking about Jason Newsted's solo album, particularly in the song Heroic Dose. Like, there's those little melodic progressions in the riffing. There was a lot of melodic progressions that made me think, am I listening to Heroic Dose by Newstead? But it was cool that they did a lot of those progressions. Again, the breakdowns, for the most part, were very Slayer-inspired. The atmospheric sections I thought were nicely done to showcase different moods throughout. The leads, they go everywhere from like squealy dive bombs to give it that Slayer charm, but there's some awesome shred and little tinges of melody, although a couple of tracks like Siege Warfare and Spires of Sikartha have some tapping sections going on to kind of showcase, hey, we can play technical too. The vocals, like I said, they feel like an unhinged mixture of Dawn of the Dead from Nunslaughter and Athanar from Midnight. The bass has lots of cool moments, and it has a presence felt throughout, which brings us to the end. The production. I love the production on here. It has a nice, even mix. Nothing's weighing in on top of anything else, but it still feels old school. I almost was convinced Arthur Risk did the production on here, but no, it was a guy by the name of Seth Manchester who did the production, as well as the synths at the beginning of Fortified by Bloodshed. So overall, man, my album of the year list just got even harder, because this is a brilliant fucking album for Black and Thrash. I don't think it's quite perfect, but it's damn near close. 9.5 out of 10. I'd say this is definitely a top 50 album of the year list for me. This is a fantastic album, and I definitely am going to have to pick it up soon. But yeah, this is awesome. This has been a great year for thrash, which is amazing. But anyways, that's just my opinion. What did you guys think of Eclipse of the Dual Moons by High Command? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high. See you guys later.
You know, it was pretty organic. I have a rocker dad. Growing up, there were not only like driving in his car and around the house, there was great music playing, but you know, if I was ever able to sneak into the man cave of the basement that he had, that was, you know, off limits after a certain hour. You know, there was a cool collection of vinyl. That's where titles like Fistful of Metal, Violence and Force, Number of the Beast, Kiss's Destroyer, which was massive for me. You can imagine being a 6-year-old kid and pulling out the LP cover for Destroyer.
Oh yeah.
How life-changing that could be.